to imagine since the midterm elections. I mean, we've gone through so many highs and lows. I mean, the lows are yet to come for Kari Lake. I don't think she has conceded yet. But what a shocker it must have been to her that there wasn't a chorus of people saying, yeah, go, Kari, go. You were denied unfairly. No, she was denied fairly. The voters spoke. So that was the big election news yesterday, that in all this counting, and we got to keep counting. It's a week we're still counting. The gubernatorial race in Arizona was decided, and clearly there were enough Democratic votes that came in that Kari Lake wasn't able to overcome, that media organizations like CNN were able to predict that she would be the winner. Project, not a psychological term, but kind of an electoral term. They were able to project that she would be the winner. And thank goodness that race was finally, I mean, that was one of the big ones, the gubernatorial race in Arizona. Katie Hobbs, who people got to know in the 2020 election because she was the spokesperson for Arizona as Secretary of State. She won, and she was very principled throughout. A lot of people wondered, oh, is she forceful enough if she's not even going to take on Kari Lake? But she was principled, and she held in there. She won, and I think that's a good victory. That's a good victory for not just the Blues, but for all the independents who saw that Kari Lake was just this Trump wannabe. Here's the thing about Kari Lake that bothered me. She's a good communicator, right? She's got a nice haircut. She knows how to use gauzy lenses. Kari Lake, that was it. That was her act. Her act was, I look good. I'm a good communicator. But don't ask me about governing. Don't ask me about policy. Because policy, whatever Trump does. Governing, oh, I govern like Trump. I govern like Trump. Right? I mean, that was her answer, pretty much. To deny everything, to go with whatever the talking point is for the Trumpers, which essentially heretofore was the GOP talking point. And I think people saw through that. They said that she's not enough. You can't just be this, gauzy media personality. You had to be more if you want to be governor of Arizona. So thank goodness the voters are still smart enough to see through that. And I think that is sort of the theme throughout the entire midterms, that the election deniers, for the most part, lost. At the gubernatorial level, at the congressional level, at the state election level, the election deniers, the Trumpers, who believe that the 2020 election was stolen. It wasn't. But they believe that. Those election deniers lost. And Kari Lake was when the last big Trumpers to go down happened yesterday. So thank goodness, right? Thank goodness that happened. Now, the only other thing now is, the House, because the Senate was taken care of over the weekend. The Senate, Catherine Cortez Masto won. She beat out Adam Laxalt. I don't think Adam Laxalt has been heard from, or at least I didn't see anything in the news about him conceding. Kari Lake isn't conceding, certainly. she said something about how calling the whole process BS. So the Senate was solved. It looks like the Democrats are going to have the advantage with Kamala Harris as the tiebreaker. However, they're looking at the Warnock Walker race in December, and that's I don't think they better not give up on that, because the Warnock Walker race, that's winnable for the Democrats. I mean, if the Republicans don't show up because they ran out of nose clips voting for Herschel Walker a first time, I mean, how many times would you vote for the joke of the party, Herschel Walker, if you know that it may not? I just don't know if Republicans will turn out. That's why Democrats better turn out and pick up that extra seat, because it's going to be needed. You're going to want that. It's a divided government that we're going to have, but it's better to have the Senate. So today we have this situation where, all right, Senate, now we still got to talk about the House. House is still kind of up for grabs. And at this point, the last time I looked, it looked like it was the House was, the Republicans were 3 pickups away from victory. They're at 215. They need 218. They were a bit presumptuous by Kevin McCarthy taking a vote. This is a preliminary vote for Speaker of the House or leader of the party. McCarthy went up against Andy Biggs, an Arizona challenger from the Freedom Caucus. And the big news is McCarthy was able to push back the challenge, but he still only had 188 votes. It seems to me he's going to need at least 200 or 218 if the House if he wants to be Speaker, is going to need at least 218. He's only got 188. If the Freedom Caucus, and these are the hardline Trumpers, if they continue to be a burr in the side of Kevin McCarthy, who knows? He may not survive the run for speakership. Like I said, 188 to 31 was the vote today. In January, when the full Congress gets in and it's all decided how the House is configured, who is the majority, who's the minority, Kevin McCarthy, if the Republicans look to pick up those 3 extra districts, 3 extra seats, Kevin McCarthy may not have the votes needed if the Freedom Caucus gets in his way. The Freedom Caucus being the Trumpers, the radical Trumpers, the Jim Jordan types. So the House is an important vote. And I keep mentioning this because all it takes is 3 seats, and they look at 3 district races in California, and one of those 3 is one that I've talked about that should have gone the other way. But with 78% of the vote, I've already given it to Michelle Steele, because that district, California 45, is mix between Orange County and LA. And Jay Chen, the candidate, the Democratic candidate, who I actually preferred, won in LA County, but in the Orange County section, Michelle Steele won. And district-wide, Michelle Steele has been ahead right now with 78% of the vote. It's 53-46, Steele over Chen. And I had hopes that maybe Jay Chen would catch up, but he's 7 points down. And I hate to think this, but something tells me that the reason why Michelle Steele is ahead is because the Asian vote went for Steele and not Chen, which would be a terrible thing because, as you know from my ALDEF column, Asian American Legal Defense and Education Fund, ALDEF, aaldef.org/blog, Michelle Steele should be ashamed of how she ran that race, using race against an Asian. We're talking anti-Asian hate that was perpetrated by an Asian American, Michelle Park Steele. She doesn't want to, she hides the Park. She's just Michelle Steele, her married name. But her surname is Michelle Park Steele. She's Korean American. And she was an incumbent from another district, then redistricting formed this new district, California 45, which includes Little Saigon. And she did what any Trumper would do. She used race to put distance, put that wedge between her and her Democratic opponent, Jay Chen, Taiwanese American. And she told lies. Flat out, she told lies about Jay Chen. I think we should never let Michelle Steele forget that. If she looks like she's going to win, she looks like she's going to be one of the three races out there that very comfortably give the Republicans the 3 seats they need to get to 218. They're at 215 now. Like I said, there are other races too, out of the races that have not been called or declared. There are at least 3 in California that you can give to the Republicans. California 41, California 3, very close. California 3, Kevin Kiley against Kermit Jones. It's like single-digit lead for Kiley, the Republican. But it looks like he's going to eke it out. And then there's the Steele-Chen race in California 45. And it just, I don't think any Asian American should forget how Michelle Steele won California 45, which is one of the districts that gave the House, or is looking likely to give the House majority to the Republicans as they reach 218, the number they need. And we can't let Michelle Steele forget that she did it through lies and deceitful ads, where she made Jay Chen look like he was teaching from the Communist Chinese Party handbook to a classroom. Not true. Doctored. Totally false. That's Michelle Steele. That's one sorry public servant. And I hope she makes up. I don't know what she can do to make up for it, frankly. But she betrayed her Asian American constituents in the Little Saigon community by lying to them. Jay Chen is more patriotic. He's a veteran. He's a lot more American in that sense than Michelle Steele. Michelle Steele never served the country in the military, never put her life on the line. It's disgraceful what she did to Jay Chen, a naval intelligence officer in the Navy Reserves. All around good guy, Jay Chen. Going down to defeat, it looks like. He's 7 points down with about 80% of the vote counted. It doesn't look good. But like I said, Asian Americans should never let Michelle Steele forget how she acted toward a fellow Asian American. Look, they're opposed. Doesn't mean you can't be civil. Doesn't mean you have to lie in the most racist way, claiming that Jay Chen, a Taiwanese American, is a communist sympathizer. That is hitting below the belt. That's like if you were fighting someone in a martial arts battle, this is someone who is kicking below the belt. Michelle Steele should be ashamed of herself. And I was going to drop it. I mentioned it a week ago when it looked like she was going to win. But now it looks pretty critical because she's being mentioned as one of the 3 seats that can give the Republicans the victory, the 218 majority in the House. That, my friends, is a sickening thought. I mean, do it fairly and squarely. Don't do it through deceit. But she's doing it through deceit. All right, so that's the House matter. And it's an important matter. I want to talk about my ALDEF column about the blue wave and what this blue wave is about. Before that, let me talk about a couple things. A couple other things. I'm going to get to the Polish question because the Polish question is a big question right now. Because if you've been watching the news lately, you know there have been some missile attacks that have struck Poland. 2 people are dead. It looks like it was a tremendous mistake, an error. I mean, we don't know. Or is it just an act of terror on the part of the Russians? It's a Russian missile. There's no doubt about it. But it's like in the part of Poland that is close to Lviv, close to the Ukrainian border. There's no doubt it was meant for Ukrainians. But hey, this is where precision is not exactly the Russians, best quality at this point. I mean, their army is kind of, it's not, we're not talking about a well-oiled machine. We're talking about an army that has been prone to errors, strategic, tactical. They've had to flee Kherson. They had to, it's not going well for Russia, right? And here they were attacking, reports were that they were attacking Kyiv, missile strikes, and now this bit of news within the last couple hours about Russian missiles attacking or hitting in Poland. Now, here's the issue. The issue is this global news trumps Trump. Trump, who's expected to shoot a missile of his own into the American political scene tonight from Florida to announce that he's running for president. I just hope that people ask themselves this question. What would Trump do if he were in charge right now? What would Trump do if he was in charge back in February or March when the whole Ukrainian situation began? Would he have enabled Putin? Would the Ukrainians even have gotten this far? Would Trump have been the obstacle in the way of a sovereign nation fighting back against Russia? I think these are legitimate questions. And I think it's also a legitimate question how would Trump have handled it now if he were like he said legitimately elected, which he wasn't, thank goodness. But if he were, what would Trump have done now if NATO had to invoke Article 5, which is a strike against one is a strike against all? And then what would it say if the U.S. under Donald Trump was the lone holdout to strike against Vladimir Putin and Russia? That would just be, think about that. When I don't know how or what's going to affect if any of the Poland news is going to affect what Trump does tonight. Probably not, because Trump doesn't have, his ego isn't bothered by, oh, Poland, missiles, NATO, screw them, I'm running for president. But the American public should wonder and should question, do we really want Trump in 2024? And if you really want to extend that question, how would Trump act? Would Trump even bother with Article 5? I mean, this is the beauty about having Biden as president, because Biden's making all the right moves, really, pretty much. I mean, you could say, oh, well, what about Afghanistan, Emil? Well, yeah, but Trump kind of set him up on that. He didn't have the kind of choice. He didn't have the kind of flexibility on Afghanistan. I'm talking about Biden, because of Trump's actions before Trump left. So I find it interesting, the kind of enthusiasm that will come Trump's way when he announces that he wants to run for president. I'm just wondering if, look, we had a lot of reality at the midterms. The big reality was that people don't like election deniers, that people can be trusted, that people can sort through and say, Carrie Lake, she's a fraud. Carrie Lake, yeah, she looks nice, she communicates well, but she's not into governing. She's an anchor desk person. We know what anchors do. I was an anchor. I turn left, turn right, banter, govern. Look, the world is safe that my ego didn't allow me to run for office, did not allow me to run for political office. I love giving speeches, as you can tell, but I may not have been the best governor. I might not have been the best person at governance, but I would have looked good. I like Carrie Lake. See, this is why, when I saw Carrie Lake say, oh, she wants to be governor, oh my God, heaven help us. The right thing happened. She lost. But Donald Trump hasn't learned his lesson. He thinks people want him. He thinks he is the answer. He is the egoic president. I just think it's a nice coincidence that this missile by Russia into Poland, sparking off the debate, NATO, Article 5. I think it's great that it happens as Trump is allowed to, or as Trump is about to make his announcement that he wants to be president again, because it allows the American public to say, that is such a bad idea. That is a terrible, 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 terrible idea. But we shall see. We shall see. He's supposedly scheduled to make his pronouncement. Apparently he's going to be on script. So who knows? They got maybe music and dancing girls and a whole scenario laid out. Because I don't know. He might have been able to get by some of the domestic stuff that's happening that raises questions. But when you see the international stuff, it makes you wonder, why would we want to give an unqualified man a second chance at the presidency? Donald Trump doesn't deserve a mulligan. So, this being a week after the election, the midterm elections, We're getting data. Did my ALDEF column on a week ago on the ALDEF exit poll. Other exit polls have come out. There's one by AP, Votecast, Associated Press. And so we got a lot of stuff to think about. And so my column today in the Asian American Legal Defense and Education Fund website, or on that website, is: was the ethnic vote America's blue wave rising or falling? And I think it's a fair question. There was no red wave. We were expecting a red wave. Why? It's because no one bothers to look at ethnic voters significantly ahead of time. They don't look at, they take exit polls, but they don't look ahead of time. So the exit polls are very helpful. So there was no blue wave, or whether there was no red wave rather, but was there a blue one? So now we look at some of these other exit polls and we figure, well, there wasn't a blue wave like there could have been. Here's what we can say. Black, Indigenous, and people of color, BIPOC voters were seen and heard on election night. And their unity really was the key. This is a real coalition. But from the numbers, it appears the coalition is beginning to fray a bit. And now what do I mean by that? Well, overall, whites were 72% of the voters on November 8th, according to the Associated Press. That's a vast majority of the voters, whites. And they voted in the majority Republican, 59%. Thank goodness for the 39% who voted blue, Democrat. Because those 39% are allies to traditional BIPOC voters. And we better hope that number grows. Because if whites are 72%, well, then we're going to have to do some other lifting on our side. BIPOC voters were less than 25% of the voters on November 8th. They can use all the help they can get. And they provided surprisingly good midterm results for Democrats. But as I said, it could have been better. It should have been better. And it wasn't. And the reason it wasn't, it's because the blues are becoming ever slightly less blue. You see, so we kind of got a mini blue wave on election night. Blacks made up 11% of the voters and went 83% blue, just 14% red. And that's high. You'd say, man, that's extremely high. 83% blue, just 11% of the vote. But if you compare that to 2018, the 2018 midterms, still lower by about 7 percentage points. A drop. I mean, that number was in the 90s in 2018. This is according to AP Votecast poll, as reported by the Washington Post. So you got blacks, 11% of the voters. They went 83% blue, which was lower than 2018. You had Hispanic voters, 11% of the electorate as well, on November 8th. And they were 56 blue to 40% red. Again, that's a decrease of about 9 to 10 percentage points from 2018. So here we got in the two biggest groups, blacks and Hispanic Latino voters, 22% of, this BIPOC coalition, and they're seeing decreasing numbers. Asian Americans, just 2% of November 8th voters. And they were at 64 blue, 34 red. That's pretty good. We mentioned that. That's in keeping with what the ALDEF poll found in its 15-state multilingual exit poll that targeted AAPIs. That's important. because you can make some national projections from an exit poll like that. But still, compared to the 2018 midterms, the Asian American blue support was around 71. And it was only like 64 this time around. I mean, there's a slide. It's less with Hispanics, with blacks, with Asian Americans, Native Hawaiian, Pacific Islanders. They're a fraction, 0.5% of the voters, and they were 58% blue, 38% red, which overall is lower than the AA part of the AANHPI. I mean, sometimes they're all clumped together. Some demographers separate them out. Here was a surprise in the BIPOC voter coalition. American Indian voters, just 1% of the voters on November 8th. They were 37% blue to 57% red. Yeah, that kind of surprised me too. Is it the casino money? I don't know. Is it the fact that the American Indian voters generations? I don't know. But I found that interesting. The I in the BIPOC was 37% blue to 57% red. So are American Indian voters already where the rest of the BIPOC voters are heading? Toward that redness? You might chalk up ethnic vote slide to turnout, but look at the motivating factors. You had economy, abortion, the fate of democracy. I think maybe despite the turnout, some of us who are Black, Indigenous, or people of color may be tired of divided government and may be willing to test new ideas that might work for them. And this is where I sense maybe the opening for Republicans and maybe even Donald Trump. Now, I say this not because I want to see Donald Trump, who's about to announce his candidacy for a third run for president. It's not. I don't want to see, this Trumpy Reddix. I don't. And Trump is going into a headwind. His election deniers have lost for governor, for Congress, for state level election chiefs. He's no longer seen as a winner. Trump is a bona fide loser among losers. He could stand next to Carrie Lake saying, yeah, she's a loser. She's a worse loser than I am. He could stand next to Adam Laxalt and say, yeah, he's a loser, worse than me. He could stand next to all his losers. Mehmet Oz and say, yeah, he's a loser. God. And I'm better than him as a talk host. I'm just telling you, even the exit polling on favorability for Trump is disastrous. So how can he possibly win? Well, by acknowledging how America's demographics have changed, and instead of fighting that change, begin courting the ethnic vote. I'm just saying, at this point, if people are going to run away from Trump or trying to get smart about the electorate, they're going to have to acknowledge the ethnic vote. And I don't mean the Herschel Walkers, whom Dave Chappelle on SNL called observably stupid. I mean regular folks who see themselves as independent swing voters. Now, I don't say this in jest, though I wish I were, because it would be irony of ironies, right? Courting the ethnic vote was one of the things the GOP was committed to like 22 years ago, and more recently in 2016. But then along came this guy Trump, and it changed everything. They threw out the diversity playbook. Diversity became a bad word. and the GOP embraced the Trump base. I think it would be an irony if outreach to ethnic voters might be the one thing that could keep the future of the GOP and Trump together. If they took advantage of what looks to be a diminishing blue lock on ethnic voters. Of course, it might also lose them the rabid and racist Trump base, because if you remember that rabid racist Trump base, the mostly white January 6 folks, and you see yourself side by side with these ethnic people, oh my God, right? You'd go crazy. You'd say, what am I doing hanging around these guys? Because remember, it was in Trump. He was the one person who they saw could represent their xenophobic tendencies in a white world that was shrinking. That's what we were saying. That's the Trump base. So actually, I think it might be a good thing to see them all shamed back under a big rock somewhere. I mean, it boils down to which group could make the GOP and Trump winners again. And if you want to attract independents, if you want to attract normal people, you're going to have to embrace not the January 6 folks who are under that big rock. You're going to have to embrace all those independents who are willing to take a look, if you make sense, to their self-interest. So that's what scares me about where we are in the future. Because I'm reading this Washington Post story on minority voters. And there's an Asian American named Angela Wang. She spells it Angilla. I don't know Angela Wang, but she's a voter. She was quoted in that story. She's described as an Orange County voter who went straight ticket Republican for the first time. She was a moderate, described as a moderate, an advocate for abortion rights, who voted for Obama twice. She doesn't like what Democrats have done with fighting crime, and she doesn't like how they emphasize more gun laws. So here we have a Second Amendment Asian American. Now, Wong, like most Asian Americans, has a sensitivity to crime in light of the rise in anti-Asian hate since the pandemic. But remember, that was fueled by Trump scapegoating us. What's her take? Quote, he definitely did not help the situation, she said to the Post. But did he cause the Asian hate? Absolutely not. That's irresponsible thinking, in my opinion. Well, he didn't beat up or pull the trigger. But I think she's wrong to think he doesn't share some blame. Trump was a green light to anti-Asian hate. And this is what gets me. People like Angela Wong say she would actually vote for Trump if he were the Republican candidate. So I ask you, does Wong sound like any Asian Americans you know? I mean, you look at some of the exit polls, there's a lot of undecideds, a lot of swings, a lot of I don't know. Asian Americans seem ready to be that kind of swing voter. But I don't know. Like I said, considering this new international situation with Poland, do you trust a Trump as the leader of the free world? I think one of the takeaways from all the data we're getting in exit polling is, you'll recall the fight over affirmative action, where Asians were pitted against other Asians, Asians who were for affirmative action pitted against Asians who were against affirmative action. I think that's the harbinger. There will be other issues that threaten a sense of Asian American voter unity in the future. Asian Americans, hey, we aren't all the same. And I guess we'd better get used to seeing more Asians on the other side of our traditional issues because it's going to happen. What I don't like about the Post story, though, is that they don't really give Wong's age or her immigration background. Is she a multi-generation Asian American? Her parents were around since the Chinese Exclusion Act? Or was she a daughter of a post-1980s immigrant? I mean, if she voted for Obama twice, she might be in her late 30s or 40s. But this is our community's evolving diversity within. And frankly, that's why we find Asian Americans who welcome Donald Trump's announcement this week. If you're on the other side like I am, well, we counteract those Asian Americans by staying true to the values that have kept the BIPOC coalition moving in the direction of social justice for all. We remember the fight for diversity. We remember the fight for affirmative action. Look, the exit polls may show us less blue than 2018. But together with other BIPOC groups, we're still fighting for what's right. Labor rights, immigration rights, voting rights, abortion rights, LGBTQ rights. Asian Americans are still majority blue. That's the reality. And that's what it takes in a democracy. All right, that was from my column. It's on ALDEF, the Asian American Legal Defense and Education Fund, aldef.org/blog. That's me. If you don't want to read, that's me talking it out. That's like the audible version. But check it out on the ALDEF blog, aaldef.org/blog. See the other columns there as well. I mean it. We are in a funny situation because while we had that blue wave, we did not have the kind of blue wave that we did in 2018. It's less. Is that a trend or is it an opening for the GOP and Trump to say, oh, these are my Asian Americans, or these are my, remember, Trump was always fond of saying, oh, there's my black, oh, there's my Latino. I don't know. Let's see what happens. I mean, I think the international situation with Poland gives you another lens to view tonight's announcement by Trump that he's going to run for president. I don't know if you come away from that analysis thinking, oh, that's a good idea. We want Trump. No. Put that on top of the 2022 midterms and say, oh, Trump, terrible idea. Election denier, terrible idea. I think it may be time for Trump to face Trump deniers. There's a larger number than he thinks. There's a larger number than his ego can calculate. But we're here. And I think there is a large coalition of people who are ready to deny him. All right. I wanted to mention Jeff Bezos because, yeah, I saw that interview he did where he talked about wanting to give away his wealth. Came out at the same time that the announcement came that Amazon was going to lay off about 10,000 people or so. And I know that Bezos doesn't have anything to do with the day-to-day, but he wants to give away his wealth. What would be better than if he said to Amazon, look, part of my wealth is in Amazon. Amazon, don't lay off these people so close to the holidays. I want to keep these people employed. This is how I'm going to give away my wealth. I mean, I'm sure he compartmentalizes and sees it as a separate thing. Oh, giving away my wealth is separate from how I treat these cruddy laborers I have to employ. But no, it's not. It could be the same. And, he's giving away money to Dolly Parton. I don't know if Dolly Parton really needs it, but apparently she runs some great charities. I like Dolly Parton. But the announcement to give like $100 million to Dolly Parton, the second go round of this no strings attached kind of fund that he's given to a lot of people, a lot of famous people. Van Jones of CNN got one of them last year. The chef, Washington, D.C., Andres, he got it last year. Dolly Parton gets it this year. Apparently, he doesn't mind giving money away to people who are rich. But Bezos, if he really wants to give away his money and it's no strings attached, why doesn't he help people who are down and out and need a hand? Like the people he's going to fire from Amazon this week. So, anyway, those are my thoughts today. We do this show Monday through Friday. It's Emil Amok's Takeout, my takes on all things considerable. I talk about stuff. I talk about stuff I write. From my perspective of being a journalist, reporter, writer, author, talk host for a long time on both the national, regional, local levels, online, radio, TV. I can't keep a job, but I can take advantage of the democratizing force of the web by doing this show Monday through Friday, 2 p.m. Pacific. Tune in. You can watch it on Twitter at Emil Amok. Maybe not for long, but it's there. At EMILAMOK. On YouTube at Emil Amok 1. EMILAMOK 1 on YouTube. On Facebook at FB, facebook.com/EmilGuillermo.media. And we put the replays on AMOK.com. Now, if you are really a regular listener to this show, I like to end with a little meditation. And generally, I go with a little loving kindness. A little loving kindness. Showing love, not just to yourself, but to others. And by showing it to others first, it comes back. It comes back to you. Fourfold, fivefold, sixfold. It comes back in folds, which is a good thing. Loving kindness, I like that. But there's another kind of meditation I like. The do nothing meditation. I'm just, a quick hit of a minute. Ideally, they say you should go 5 to 6 minutes at a time, but it's cumulative. So if you do 1 minute or maybe 30 seconds, that's helpful. And what I find helpful is just this idea of doing nothing. Like I like to stand, eyes open, taking a couple deep breaths, letting my jaw relax, my spine is straight, taking some deep breaths, and doing nothing. And feeling where the rest is in my body. The rest meaning, where is there the feeling, the absence of any kind of movement or action? Where is the rest? Finding it. And just feeling it. All the while breathing. You feel the rest as you do nothing. And you get a sense of its calm. And and you get a sense that you're building a sense of equanimity, meaning you're calmer. You're not overreacting. You're not reacting. You're just allowing. You're doing nothing. Which sometimes, when you're an activist, especially, can be relaxing and provide the kind of perspective one needs as you recharge and continue on. Do nothing. I find it helpful. And so, as I wish for me, I wish for you. May you be safe. May you be happy. May you be healthy. And may you live with ease. Emil Guillermo here. Back again tomorrow, 2 p.m. Pacific Live. Check out replays on amok.com. Till then, mahal kita.